2022 Longmont City Council session to order. Welcome, everybody. As a reminder, this meeting is going to can be viewed at the live stream at www.longmontcolorado.gov. To view the live stream, you can go to, longmontcolorado.gov or the city's YouTube channel at longmontpublicmedia.org or Comcast channels 8 or 880. Can we have the roll call, please?
Absolutely. Mayor Peck.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez.
Here.
Councilmember Hidalgo Faring.
Here.
Councilmember Martin.
Here.
Councilmember Waters.
Here.
Councilmember Yarborough.
Here.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Let's stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Anyone wishing to speak at public invited to be heard will need to add his or her name to the list outside the council chambers. Only those on the list will be invited to speak. Do any of the councilors have motions to direct the city manager to add agenda items to future agendas? Councilor Martin.
Yes, Mayor Peck, I hope this is the right point at which to introduce this. I sit on the Boulder Consortium of Cities, and they have a request for a person for Longmont to appoint a person to participate in the living wage discussion that is going on for Longmont or Boulder County cities, and with Longmont wages being what they are, anything that is legal under that living wage state statute would not actually affect wages in Longmont, but it's probably better to have the cooperation include Longmont as a big part of the region. So I feel personally that it could be done without harming the Longmont economy one way or the other, regardless of how you feel about that. So I would move to put a discussion of appointing a participant on a future agenda soon, because they need it.
I would second that. Do we have any discussion? Let's just vote.
Yeah, I'm not in live meeting yet. Aye.
So that passes unanimously. Thank you for that motion, Marcia.
Here I am.
So I have a couple of things that I would like to present to add to future agendas. The first one is, and I'm doing this for the discussion on council, we've had some feedback on the state's family leave policy, so I would like to move that we put on a future agenda to bring back that discussion.
I'll second.
Okay, I've moved that, moved by Joan Peck, seconded by Councilor Hidalgo Faring. Do we have any discussion? See number 7, that Councilor Moore.
It's both of
No.
us.
Oh. They're both red now.
So, yeah, I don't know what's going on, but I would like a little clarification about what would be discussed, because I thought we handled that.
We did handle it. I have gotten feedback from some counselors as well as the public that they felt that we did not get all the information we needed, especially from the state, to make a decision. So I am just putting it out there. If you wish to rediscuss this, we can bring it back on a future agenda. If not, your vote will show. Councilor Waters.
Just for the sake of clarification, is your motion to reconsider?
No, my motion is to bring it back on a future agenda for discussion with perhaps a state representative or an author of the bill, or just to satisfy, to see if we would like to reconsider.
Just as a parliamentary consideration, haven't we dealt with the issue, we voted on the issue?
We did.
Those on the prevailing side could move to reconsider. But this is a decision that was made by council. So I'm not clear what you're moving or you're proposing that we do.
I am proposing that we put it on a future agenda to look at the issue again from both sides, the city side, and have a representative from the state. And then if we would like to make a motion to reconsider at that time, then we could. But
Again, just for the sake of the procedure, when did we vote on that?
2 weeks ago.
So this would be our is this the first time we would have had a chance to reconsider? So I think if you're going to vote to reconsider, it has to occur in the next meeting, moved by someone on the prevailing side of that motion or that decision. Otherwise, I'm wondering, I guess we could ask Eugene, what's the parliamentary restriction or prohibition on bringing items back that have already been decided? And how many times we can deal with the same issue in a term of the council?
Good question.
Just so we get it, just procedure,
Of
we
course.
get it right, that's all.
Of course.
Mayor and Council, Eugene May, City Attorney. I'm looking up, it's Rule 19. It's generally the first meeting at which you can take formal final action would be the motion to reconsider.
Is this the first formal meeting?
This
At
would be
which-
this is a study session, so it's really referring, I think, to the next regular
Right.
session. I can't remember exactly which meeting we considered the family.
It was the last
what I
regular
thought.
one, and then we had the LHA meeting last week.
Yeah,
So
Yeah,
it would
yeah,
be
yeah.
the next, so I am putting it on the agenda, bring it back at the next regular meeting for reconsideration and discussion.
okay, procedurally, is that the, I'm not.
I don't
just-
know
just
either.
to get it right. It would be, do we do this at the next regular meeting to reconsider to bring it back in the next meeting after that? I think procedurally is the way it goes, but I'm no parliamentarian.
According to the rules of procedure, you would consider the motion to reconsider at the next regular meeting.
I think
Okay.
that's the one way we could get it back in front of us for reconsideration.
So this motion, we don't need this motion, we'll just do it
I'm not
next
trying
week.
to be an obstructionist, it's just trying to get it right.
You could put it on the next regular session agenda
That's
to
what I-
reconsider.
That's exactly what I wanted to do. So I move, just to restate, to put the State Family Leave Act on the next regular session to reconsider. Do you still second that?
I do still second it.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Let's vote.
Okay, well, I have,
Oh, I didn't, that's right.
I had to turn it off and turn it back on.
Okay. Counselor Hidalgo-Farron.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So I am going to be speaking in support of bringing this back. The reason why, so prior to when the packet came out, I had reached out to a few employees. It was 6. It wasn't anything extensive. But it seemed like from the folks that I spoke to, they were like, oh, yeah, I like the idea of having a choice. But they didn't really have, and it wasn't until they listened to our conversation at council that they were like, wait a minute, and kind of wanting to go back. I think there was a misunderstanding that, and I didn't clarify this in conversations I had with employees, was, and it was more like, just lower paying, just your regular workforce out there. And when they came back and listened, it was like, hey, we didn't realize that this was the actual ballot initiative that we voted for. And, so seemed like there was some there was some misunderstanding. The other piece of it, so one thing that prompted me to vote for it was the fact that people had that option to back out. The thing that, as I started, delving a little bit more, and, shame on me for not looking at this beforehand, My concern was the sustainability piece. Like we pay into para. We really depend on new employers, new teachers to come in to cover para, to pay for para. Otherwise, we lose our retirement. So, would it be sustainable if only a handful of employees utilize this insurance, the family insurance, and the majority of our employees don't? Would it be able to sustain itself as a program? So that was my concern. The other thing, when I went on the state site, there was an opportunity to have a presentation brought out. And looking at that, it was like, well, I really would have liked to have seen that piece as well, for us to get a full grasp of what the implications and what the consequences would be for choosing one side over the other. So that's my input.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Peck. I feel we voted the right way, and I feel that the public mostly thinks that we're taking something away from our employees when in fact we wouldn't, except that there appears to be some rulemakings that aren't there yet. And because of those rulemakings not being there yet, if somebody who has something come up in the middle of the plan year or something like that, and they didn't opt in at the right time, they might have to wait some number of months before they could get into the plan. And since the city doesn't really gain or lose that much either way, maybe we should err on the side of conservatism and pull everybody into the plan. So I don't know whether we can decide to reconsider this when the rulemaking is done. I mean, not, whether we could make a decision like that when we reconsider our vote next week, but I'd like to have more information than that, and so I'm going to vote yes to reconsider.
Are there any other comments? Seeing none, let's vote. So that carried unanimously. Thank you. I have one other motion, and that is I move to put on a future agenda, hopefully the next week, as a pre-session for council to discuss gun safety laws. And it would be a pre-session before the council meeting. Let's wait, see if the next session works.
I'm trying to, when is the next, did we have an exec that we were looking at for next week?
We did. We have one planned for next week.
I feel that we should probably do this sooner than later. So I'll just, let me restate that motion then. I am just going to direct staff to put on a future agenda the discussion, a pre-session for council to discuss gun safety laws.
As quickly as possible?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So I made that motion, and it was seconded by Councilwoman Hidalgo Faring. Do we have any discussion? Councilor Waters.
So we're not meeting on the 21st?
The 21st is
CML?
CML. I'm kind of, I guess would council be open to a different day if we could?
Other than a Tuesday? But I'm just, in terms of calendaring, we don't meet again after tonight, we don't meet again after next week until when? The 28th?
28th.
All right. That's just what I wanted to clarify. Thanks.
Yeah, I wish it could be sooner than that. Harold, would you be open to throwing out a few dates that are not council dates and see if if the council is open to meeting on an off date?
Yeah, I think, let us talk, we may be able to postpone it, it's just, it's related to some of
Okay.
the development codes that we needed to bring back, and so it'll just delay that.
We do need those development
So,
codes. Oh, darn.
But, I mean, if this sounds like it's more time sensitive for you all, and so we could move this to the we could move what we had planned to the 28th and slide this one in as a pre-session for next.
Thank you.
Okay.
That would be great. Is there any more discussion? Let's vote. So that carries unanimously. Thank you, Harold, for considering doing that.
No worries.
You and Eugene as well. Okay. So I do have, are there any, do you have any additions to the agenda? I'm sorry, I forgot to ask that.
No, Mayor, I do not.
Okay, thank you. So we have a couple of proclamations tonight. Special. Oh. I did do that out of order. My apologies. It is time for the public invited to be heard, and the first one on our list is Lance Whitaker. You have 3 minutes, and please state your name and address, Lance.
My name's Lance Whitaker. I reside at 1750 Collier Street. I've been there approximately 10 years. I've lived in Longmont for about 40 years now. And I've come before the city council today because I've been talking with Doug at City Planners about starting a smoke-friendly area here in Longmont for cannabis and tobacco. And he said that I would have to address you guys either on an exemption, a permit, or a license before I could even look at any retail spaces here in Longmont. So I am here today to address you guys on that agenda.
We don't usually converse with people at public invited to be heard, but if our assistant city manager can take down your name and information, we will research that for you.
Okay. Doug at City Planner has also done some research on that
Perfect.
with Denver and what their laws are and stuff like that. And he said that I was the first one to address with this. So I'd like to get on the ground floor on this because I know the city only allows 4 dispensaries in town. So I'd figure they'd probably even allow less areas to smoke in public. So who would I get a hold of?
These ladies right there.
Okay. Do you mean? Dawn? Okay.
Thank you, Lance.
Mayor, if I may
Yes.
interject real quick, code prohibits this, and so if council wanted to consider it, council would have to direct staff to amend the code to allow that use.
Okay. Thank you. Next up is Polly Christensen.
Hi, Polly Christensen, 410 Judson Street, Longmont, Colorado. I have to talk really fast. I want to talk about 2 things. First of all, I want to remind everybody that this is Juneteenth weekend, and a lot of events are happening. On Saturday, there's a Juneteenth Legacy Picnic. This is set up by Betty Nanali, and it's 12:30 to 5 o'clock Saturday at the Willow Farm Park, 901 South Fordham. People can attend for free, but if they'd like to purchase food, the cost is $15 per adult or $8 for a child. People are encouraged to bring their blankets, chairs, and non-alcoholic beverages, and it should be fun. I'm sure that Madeline Woodley will talk about many of the other events that she and her sister, Reverend Glenda Jackson, have set up. And Shakita will talk about the overall thing. So I'm not going to talk about it anymore. But do come. It'll be fun and informative, and that's the whole idea. So I wanted to actually talk about the inclusionary housing program Snapshot that is on your agenda to talk about tonight. I think Molly O'Donnell did a wonderful job of presenting all the statistics and everything. I have a few suggestions as somebody who was pretty instrumental in helping set it up in the first place. I would like to see if you would consider upping it from 12% to 20%. That's more closer to what is actually needed. Kathy Fedler, who was the former director of housing, has told us numerous times that the fee in lieu was too small. I would suggest that the fee in lieu needs to be considerably more than it is right now. The city needs to buy land, build homes, and not the market. It should also apply to all rental, not just new rentals. And I would strongly advocate for the city to hunt high and low for any kind of penny, and I know you're already doing this, from federal and state funds and county funds. And please do not be distracted by the LEDP developer-driven initiative for attainable housing. It is important, but it's a distraction from actually getting the affordable housing resolved. So, thank you very much. Take care. Come to Juneteenth.
Thank you. Strider.
Thank you. All of a sudden I can see out of one eye and I can read out of the other eye, but not both. I'm halfway in the middle. Strider Benston, 951 17th Avenue. Guns. Right after World War II, the corporate billionaire class saw the threat of democracy in this country and around the world and decolonization, and they decided to eliminate that. But General Eisenhower became president, and he believed in Social Security and thought the billionaires actually ought to pay some taxes. So they had to wait, and then they jumped into the political game and pushed Goldwater. Well, they've been organizing since then to take over and destroy the country. And the NRA didn't get into it until what they did, after they exported industrial capital in the 70s, the CIA started importing cocaine in large quantities. So you could criminalize marijuana and mass incarceration of the people who could not get jobs in the steel mills or electronics industry and stuff. So they created that game plan, and it took them another 20 years before they took over basically almost the whole country. And I had a friend back in Chicago when I was at the post office, a friend in a radical group I was with, a black man called T.C. Baldwin, and he was telling the local group about some racist incidents he experienced. And he said, call me N ... Once it's an incident. Call me N ... Twice it's a tendency. Call me N ... 3 times it's policy. The NRA has a policy of killing people in mass numbers in the streets in Chicago and Baltimore and St. Louis for a decade or two, and now it's everybody everywhere. Get out as many AR-15s as possible, see how many people you can kill. They make more money. It's connected with the hate industry, the stovepipe news industry, creating people who don't know but one way of thinking, and the person next to them is someone they have to hate or kill. That is the game plan that's going on now. That's similar to how Hitler took over Germany in the 20s. And I can give you the whole history of that. But that is the game plan, is a race war in this country, and the multi-billionaires get richer and richer and richer. Texas says, let's ban doors in schools. What about mental health? He stole $211 million from mental health
Thank you,
out
Strider.
of the Texas budget. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we are ready for our proclamations. The first one I'm going to read is a proclamation designating June 2022, excuse me, as LGBTQ and Pride Month in Longmont, Colorado. Whereas all residents deserve the right to live in a town that respects their dignity, safety, and overall well-being by supporting equality and fair treatment for all. And whereas the city of Longmont has a diverse LGBTQ community that includes people of many backgrounds, identities, and philosophies, and whereas diversity is a community asset that enhances and enriches the lives of all community members, and whereas LGBTQ plus community members have made and continue to make great and lasting contributions to strengthen the fabric of our community. And whereas during the month of June, residents of the city of Longmont are encouraged to honor the history, diversity, and the resilience of the LGBTQ plus communities, and whereas the city of Longmont honors its commitment to the promotion and protection of the human rights of LGBTQ plus residents. Now, therefore, I, Joan Peck, Mayor, by virtue of the authority vested in me in the City Council of the City of Longmont, do hereby proclaim June 2022 as LGBTQ plus Pride Month in Longmont and urge all residents to respect and honor our diverse community and to build and celebrate a culture of inclusiveness and acceptance. Who gets to accept this? Marty Moore. Do you want to say a few words? Great.
Mayor Peck, council members, thank you very much for once again acknowledging this important month for the LGBTQ community. I'm a grateful citizen of the city of residents, I should say, of the city of Longmont, and I couldn't be more proud of the work that you all do for inclusion, along with your city staff, Harold, and the folks who report to him. So thank you. Pride celebration is this Saturday. It'll be from 2 until 6, just down the street on between Emory and Main on 4th. So we hope you'll all come by. Our mayor will be speaking as we start things off, and there's a visibility march before that. So line up on Main Street at time 1:30, I believe it is. So thank you very much.
Would you like a picture of?
We would love a picture.
Thank you.
And
Great.
Kyle Carrigal is with me. He's a new member of Outboulder staff.
All right, 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
So our next proclamation is designating June 2022 as Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month in Longmont, Colorado. Whereas Alzheimer's disease is the 7th leading cause of death, affecting more than 76,000 Coloradoans among 6.5 million Americans and more than 50 million people around the world. And whereas Alzheimer's disease is a progressive neurodegenerative brain disorder that tragically robs individuals of their memories and leads to progressive mental and physical impairments for which there is currently no prevention or cure. And whereas this disease preys heavily on specific segments of our community, with Black Americans twice as likely as whites to develop the disease, Hispanics 50% more likely than non-Hispanic Caucasians, and women account for 2/3 of all people living with Alzheimer's. And whereas the impact of Alzheimer's extends to loved ones of those with the disease, including 159,000 Colorado family members and friends who provided an estimated 184 million hours of unpaid care in 2021 at a value of over $3.7 billion. And whereas the cost to our country in total payments for health care, long-term care, and hospice for people with Alzheimer's disease in 2021 was $321 billion. And whereas the City of Longmont recognizes the efforts of the Alzheimer's Association to raise funds and promote awareness to fight Alzheimer's disease and related disorders, thereby improving the quality of human life for those living with the disease and their care partners, and bringing us closer to finding a cure. Now, therefore, I, Joan Peck, Mayor, by virtue of the authority vested in me, and the City Council of the City of Longmont, do hereby proclaim June 2022 as Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month in Longmont, and encourage residents to support those with Alzheimer's and brain disease in the hope that a cure will soon be found. This is a great proclamation. Who wants to accept this? Would you like to say a few words? Great.
I'm Brandy Queen, acting manager of the Longmont Senior Center, and I'm here with Ralph Patrick from the Alzheimer's Association. We appreciate you all making this proclamation because not only is there no cure for Alzheimer's or any of the about 130 different types of dementia that we know about, there are also very, very few treatment options. So our organizations are constantly working to try to support family members dealing with these diseases, keep people safe at home, keep families engaged in the community and getting the supports that they need. So thank you for bringing some attention to this.
Thank you. Do you want to say a few words?
Yes, echoing and expanding upon what Brandy said, the Alzheimer's Association provides our services at no cost to caregivers and people living with dementia. And that includes support groups, educational programs, and care consultations. And I'd love to have the time to be able to share with you some of the anecdotal stories that both Brandy and I have stored up as a result of working with people. But probably most, if not all of you, have been personally affected in one form or another by this disease. And the Alzheimer's Association is greatly appreciative of you bringing attention to this disease. As one former physician at the Mayo Clinic once said, if we don't find a cure for this disease or a way to at least slow it down, it will break the system as we know it. Because the expenses that are related in this resolution are minimal compared to what we see on the horizon. It's going to cost us in the trillions of dollars. So thank you very much for bringing attention to this. And I also want to thank specifically Brandy Queen and the Longmont Senior Center, who just do amazing work. And I know you're aware of that, but they host educational programs, they host support groups, and they have encouraged the Longmont community to be a dementia-friendly community. So thank you very much to all of you and to Brandy and the Senior Center.
Thank you. Would you like to have a picture of us presenting this to you? Sure. Okay. Now we're at the part that you've all been waiting for. We're at the study session items, the inclusionary housing program of the 2021 Snapshot. Molly, is that you? Okay.
Mayor Peck, members of council, I'm Molly O'Donnell, Housing and Community Investment Division Director, and tonight I'm going to be doing a presentation on our 2021 Annual Inclusionary Housing Program Report. So just a quick summary of what I'm going to go over today, a recap of the affordable housing goal, a synopsis of the 2021 Longmont housing market, an overview of investments, and an impact on the inclusionary housing program. So since the establishment of the program in 2018, we have achieved 45% of our desired goal of having 5,400 units, or 12% of all of our housing stock in Longmont, be affordable units. This means we need to create about 200 new affordable homes annually while maintaining and preserving all of the existing affordable homes in order to meet this desired goal. In total, between 22 and 2024, we are projected to exceed the 200 units per year goal, but as you can see from 2019 to 2021, that we were not at that 200 mark, so we have some making up to do. Overview of investments. So the city invests local and federal dollars into programs dedicated to advancing our affordable unit development goals. In 2019, we had a fair amount of investment, and that was pretty a steady increase from years prior. In 2020, we definitely had a pivot due to COVID and put a lot more of our resources into individual assistance and COVID-related impacts. But as you can see in 2021, we are back on the upswing into the affordable housing investment. The leveraged funding is highly dependent on development projects, such as LIHTC projects, so it only takes one project to bump up this leveraged funding by quite a lot. It can vary pretty wildly per year. Looking into our Longmont housing market, so the single-person households earning 50% of the area median income, and in 2021, that was $43,900 per year, or $22.86 per hour for full-time work, have not been able to afford the average rent in Longmont since 2012, and the gap has only grown. Note that the orange bars indicate incomes needed to provide a cushion so that only 33% of income is spent on rent. This means that the entire monthly income of a 50% AMI person cannot even meet the average rent in Longmont in 2021. Median home prices have continued to increase for both attached for sale product at a 5.5% increase and detached for sale homes at an 8.8% increase. 2012 is when a family at 80% of the area median income could no longer afford to purchase the median detached home. And 2015 was when both the 80% area of median income and our city median wage earners could no longer afford the median attached home prices. So here's our summary of new homes sales versus existing home sales. And you'll notice in 2021, the amount of new home sales slowed down. And that does mean that those new homes are closed and recorded in 2021, not necessarily just under construction. But it can be assumed that the record high sales of existing homes was really due to what's been happening in our market in 2021 with that's pretty enticing, the amount of equity that you could gain. So looking to our impact on the inclusionary housing program, we continue to see an increase in the number of affordable homes being built because of the city's continued commitment to investing financial and staff resources into affordable housing programs such as the inclusionary housing program. 24 families made Longmont their home in 2021 due to the inclusionary housing program. We do anticipate a large uptick in the number of units in the next several years due to the number of projects in the pipeline. So we have 10 rental homes and 14 for-sale homes. So we did get 24. However, 4 homes that were under the previous inclusionary zoning program aged out of their affordability period. And so that's why we need to ensure that we maintain and preserve existing units as well as gain new ones to keep progress in a forward direction. So we've seen a 24% increase in the number of developed subject to the IH requirement. The distribution between home ownership type for sale or rental projects is fairly close. You can see here that we are seeing a decrease in the number of units being provided on site to meet the IH requirements and an increase in the fee in lieu option. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in a moment. But due to the nature of the program's tracking methods, you'll see that 2021 and 2022 to date are combined. Next year, you'll see that split out again, but we just have a tracking issue that we are working on getting cleared up. So what is important here is it is clear that the inclusionary housing program is not slowing down development by any means. We're still getting increased the number of developments in progress, and with that, an increase in IH requirements added to those projects. So we've seen a steady increase in the number of developers year over year that select the fee in lieu option, with the majority of the rental developments selecting this option. 50% of the developments selected fee in lieu in 2021. The projections for 2022 are 70%, and for 2023 are 60%. As you can see, we've had a steady increases since the beginning, I should say since the first time we started collecting fee in lieu, since the program started in 2018. You can see, though, that we have a huge amount of fee in lieu coming if all developments in the pipeline make it through. But that this is an actual calculation based on what is in the pipeline. And our middle tier pipeline, so these are those projects that are including designated middle tier units in helping in their IH requirement to reduce their affordable in effect, but these are for designated middle tier units. Based on information collected from developers during the design review process, we're expecting a total of 5,824 homes to be added to our housing stock by the end of year 2024. 732 of those are expected to be affordable. This does have us on track to meet our 200 unit per year goal, and 100 of those will be provided in partnership with nonprofits. For middle tier, you can see that we did gain 25 units of middle tier that were completed construction in 2021. We had 2 other developments in the pipeline, but at this point, it's looking like construction cost escalation is making that a challenge, or they may be moving to market rate. So information from the 2020 consolidated plan that we do for the CDBG program shows the greatest rental housing need is below 40% area median income, affordable at that income level. This was likely exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic, since this data came out before that started. IH rental projects have primarily provided 60% area median income units in recent years, but we don't have a gap in that income range. This is why the city lowered the threshold for affordable units under the inclusionary housing program to 50% of the area median income to try and narrow the target to lower AMIs. You can also see the beginnings of the gap re-widening once you get into the attainable housing ranges. Sales prices keep rising, which trickle down and further stress a lot of aspects of the issues affecting the housing spectrum, from the lowest to the highest. Additionally, maximum sales prices for for-sale units provided under the program have not been revised since 2018 when it was put into place. So that's something we have a priority to address. Something we're also keeping on our radar is watching that when a project is in a ideally located place in town near transit, job opportunities, core services. Many of the incentives for affordable housing that we offer are already provided due to their location, and this includes density and height bonuses. So we're seeing a concentration of market rate units in these key areas, and the fee in lieu being selected instead. So we would like to explore how we can further incentivize affordable housing when the other incentives are already baked into the project. We really do want to have units provided on site and provide that mix in those key areas. Fee in lieu is the most popular option very clearly in the program. We'd like to analyze why that is, ensure that the result is best serving the city's affordable housing goals, and as the pot of funding from fee in lieu increases, strategically direct how those funds are being used to further the city's affordable housing goals. And finally, eventually, we would like to see data on who the inclusionary housing program is serving. This is not something that has been tracked to date. It's separate from our other income and data tracking on the affordable housing side. But we really want to know what the characteristics of the households are that are moving into units specifically provided under the inclusionary housing program. And that concludes the presentation for now.
Do we have any questions or concerns from council? Councilwoman Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. Molly, could you repeat the number of expected collections of fee in lieu in 2024 or 25, whichever year you said that was?
Thank you.
4.4 million.
4.4 million. And what I'm looking for is a comparison of what the city or the LHA could produce leveraging that amount of money to fund with LIHTC and all, to leverage the capital stack to build affordable units that matched our demographic, as opposed to what could be built if we didn't have fee in lieu and everybody had to build their own affordable units. What would be the value and number of the resulting units both ways?
So what I can provide is an example. Mm-hmm. So the Crispin 2 project is bringing in 83 affordable units, and the city invested $1.875 million as part of the capital stack. Mm-hmm. So $1.875 million to get 83 units. This is not a perfect formula across the board, but just for comparison purposes. $83.
I'm doing the math
this
too.
We're doing math on the fly. I'm getting about 250 or so units could be leveraged with about 4.4 million using that one project as an example.
And that's kind of hard too, because I think that's a pretty good number. So what we don't know, rising cost in construction, so that could reduce it. How do you come in terms of development on property that you already own? That's going to change the equation a little bit. So there's other variables that will start coming into that calculation.
Yeah, I understand. On the other hand, if the expected payers of fee in lieu built affordable units instead, I mean, you must have some number of units in the projects that are that you're anticipating. How many units would that be? The question is, at our current fee in lieu level, which way do we get more units?
So
and I understand it's an estimate.
Mm-hmm. So currently between 2022 and 2024, the estimate is 732 more units being provided on site as the option chosen compared to fee in lieu. In terms of an estimate, would you like to, I'm trying to figure out how to compare that, apples to apples.
Me too.
Maybe that's something we can dig into and report back.
Okay.
What's the projected number of houses being built?
Total,
Yeah.
5,400 total housing stock, 732 provided on site, plus 4.4 and 1.2 of fee in lieu altogether, basically.
Yeah, let us work those numbers
Yeah.
because we've got to work that a little bit to understand that.
Is the reaction is, the immediate reaction is the fee in lieu is too low, but what are the consequences going to be? And if everybody chooses to build, are they going to choose to build, and are they going to choose to build enough affordable units?
Yeah, that's what we've been actually mulling over.
Yeah.
As we look at, if I can expand upon this a little bit, when we look at the attainable housing component and how that fits and what we need to do, because in all of these, the variables are pushing and pulling each other. And that's why I want to look at it a little bit more so we can get you that information, because theoretically, it may be more advantageous for someone to look at building, if they can get the prices in where they want them, build in the middle tier, but then pay a fee in lieu based on what their capital stack is looking like at that time. And so we need to talk to some folks and bring that back to you all.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Waters?
Thanks, Mayor Peck. On this same slide, the estimate in 2024 for the 4.4 million in the Affordable Housing Fund, I saw the two projects or two developments that have moved out of the mid-tier range for reasons we can predict, labor, cost of materials, et cetera. Is that number a reflection of having moved, that was like 700 units, right? 740 units if you take Mountain Brook plus the Highlands. Boom, take those out. Well, of the mid-tier options, there were 200 and 100, so 300 units that were going to be mid-tier, as I recall. Now they're going to pay payment fee in lieu, and that's primarily what that 4.4 reflects. Just so as I can process what's the implication of the cost of those moving out of the mid-tier range.
We can come up with that number for you as well. There is a lot of developments listed in there that includes the 4.4. That's not carrying the bulk.
That would be helpful to know, just to see, because there's a set of assumptions about what we would see, right, at some point with attainable or working force or affordable or attainable housing, that's just not going to materialize, just for market reasons. How much of that shows up in the 4.4 would be helpful to know.
Okay.
Any other comments? I do have one, just out of curiosity. Even though we get the fee in lieu and we're running out of land to build on, and we have permanently affordable units that will at some point term out of being affordable, I would think that the developer, including IZ in their development, because they have the land, would be preferable to the city. But I can understand why it wouldn't be to the developer. So I don't know, is that a consideration that you're thinking of at all? That at some point we won't have any land and we won't have any affordable?
Well, when we get to a point of redevelopment, it would still apply to the net number of units added. So there is considerations to weigh when you're looking at fee in lieu. Fee in lieu is an attractive option for developers. That does mean that the city then collects those funds and can strategically direct it, but it also does mean that we are probably building an affordable development rather than having units scattered throughout town.
Which was the intent of the affordable, the affordable ordinance anyway, the IZO. So.
Yeah, and I think part of it is, part of what you get into is understanding whether the fee in lieu is high enough. And that's on our mind to try to see how that really what that looks like. Last week we talked a little bit about certainty. And when you look at it in terms of a matrix component, there's a lot of certainty for developers in terms of paying the fee in lieu, in terms of where they're going to be, what they're going to be able to do in terms of time. And so in some cases, that could be driving some of the decisions as well. And that's what we've got to really dig in, because they know if they're going to pay it, here's what we're going to build, and then move through the process.
It's predictable.
And that certainty is really, really important for folks, especially in a tumultuous market like we're in right now.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hidalgo-Faring.
Thank you, Meryl. So I have a follow-up question. So what are some aspects, what are things that we need to be looking at in the policy that would provide that certainty, so we can ensure that more, that they're building more of that 12%?
I think it's embedded in a lot of what we've talked about last week in terms of the attainable component, density, height, lot size. Those things are going to overlap into both affordable and the attainable conversation. And if they can really understand what they can do and how they're going to do that, that then provides a clarity in terms of, you know, the path that they're going to choose. The more that they have to look at, do I have to go through a variance, do I have to do this, and do I have to do this, the less likely they are to actually build that product. I'll give you this example again, and I gave it to you last Tuesday, and it was part of the flood recovery funds, where we built, I think it was 60% affordable housing. We partnered with a group on Mountain View and Pace, and there's 14 units. They actually wanted to build an additional floor. This was before we had the additional height requirement. They then had to go through the variance process, and just because of the uncertainty, having to go through different review processes, they just decided to pull and just build what they could that was essentially by right, because they couldn't afford the expense that was associated with the uncertainty in that process. And so those are all things, when we talk to you about a lot of the aspects on the attainable side, it could be applied to affordable too. I think there's going to be a lot of overlap. What we don't want to do in that is undercut the incentives that we have on the affordable side and how we're looking at it, because you still have to incentivize that. But it's those types of things. It's, you know, one of the suggestions we said is administrative approvals. Administrative approvals create a lot of certainty for folks that make it more feasible for them to do certain things.
Okay, great, thank you.
So Harold, it was brought up a couple of times that we should increase the affordable housing ordinance from 12% to 20%. And would that increase the uncertainty in the development world, or would it make a difference in their ability to build more affordable within their development versus giving fee in lieu? If I'm correct, I think Broomfield has a 30%.
I'm not sure what Broomfield has.
I was just curious as to what impact would that have?
Well, I think when you look at the capital, I mean, you've got to understand what the capital stacks, what that's going to look like.
Okay.
And what the cost is to develop. And so what, you know, so you go on the expense side and you go, what's the land cost? What's the horizontal infrastructure cost? Because that expense, whether it's an affordable, an attainable, or a market rate, is pretty much the same. You know, unless you get enough density in that to reduce the actual price per home. As I'm looking at a couple of projects right now that are both affordable and in that attainable range, I think the impact's going to be to the attainable side, because that is an added cost to the development. And so when you add that cost to the development, if you're saying you need to build 8% more affordable, that's probably going to push more people into the fee in lieu, because how is that cost going to really fall into the overall expense of the land cost and the horizontal development, and then you add the cost of the actual structure. And I think we will have a better sense of that in 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay.
Because that's the very thing we're, not to the 12 versus 20, but here's really what the cost is for an individual unit. And how's that going to layer in, and that's what we've got to figure out.
That would be helpful.
To answer the Broomfield question, they require 10% for for-sale product and 20% for rental product to be offered at affordable rates. Boulder has 25% a flat. Some communities in Boulder County are at 12 because the Boulder County Regional Housing Partnership has set the goal at 12. And there might be, well, I will double check and see if there is a community under 12 because I think there might be.
So that's where I got the 30. I think the person that told me just combined the affordable and attainable.
Yeah, and I guess what you don't know is what are the land costs, and,
Exactly.
and is that support that move to 20? Because if the land costs are lower, then it may be easier for people to absorb that in that area. There's so many different components to this.
Yep.
We're finding as we're just trying to do certain things.
Well, I think this has been a great presentation. Every week we learn more. It's good. Thank you for all of your work.
Thank you for listening.
I think we're going to take a 5-minute break. We are back, and we're ready for our next study session item, the utility rate studies.
Good evening, Mayor Peck and members of council. I am Raven Martin with Strategic Integrations, and tonight I will be speaking about the proposed rate studies for electric and wastewater utilities. In this presentation, I will discuss how economic pressures are driving the need for these rate studies. I will also discuss the rate study purpose, specific factors related to electric and wastewater utility rates, the timeline, as well as review the philosophy and goals for these rate studies, because at the end, we will ask council to confirm these goals. Municipal utilities are typically nonprofit and therefore seek only to cover the cost of providing services to the community. The method is common for rate studies regardless of the service provided. These rate studies were precipitated by a review of the financial status of these utilities, as well as increasing costs which are affecting the ability to provide these essential services. The first part of a rate study is determining the revenue requirements, which is the funding that is needed in order to deliver programs and services to the community. The revenue requirement is typically split between the operating and capital expenses. Then, once the revenue requirement is determined, that amount is allocated among various classes of customer classes. The cost of service analysis then ensures that there is equity among these customer classes. Rate alternatives are then proposed, which allows us to consider what other goals council and the community might have, what behavior we would like to incentivize, and how commodities are priced to achieve these behaviors. Rate studies allow the city to ensure that we have sufficient revenue to operate the utilities sustainably in the future. Currently, there is significant inflation occurring across all sectors, as well as disruptions in the supply chain, which has impacted the cost of providing services. For electric, the cost of purchased power has increased and requires a review and update to current electric rates for 2023. Sure. Is that better? Okay. For wastewater, there has been a significant increase in the cost of specific items such as treatment chemicals, fuel, metals, and construction materials. There is also citywide growth, and updates are needed to the sewer system to match this growth. Additionally, there are state regulations which the city must adhere to in order to retain its wastewater discharge permit. Purchased power from Platte River Power Authority is the largest part of the electric utilities' operating costs. Longmont is fortunate that PRPA's average wholesale rate is 18% lower than the next lowest regional provider. This allows LPC to keep overall electric costs low and translates into lower rates for LPC's customers. Last year, City Council adopted recommended electric rates for 2022 and 2023. However, although an adjustment to the cost of wholesale power was already anticipated, due to macroeconomic pressures, the cost of purchased power will increase up to an additional 2.9%. And this increase cannot be covered by existing rates. A recommended increase for 2023 will be proposed, followed by a comprehensive cost of service analysis to set rates for 2024 and 2025. The city's current wastewater rates were adopted in 2017 on a 3-year rate schedule and have been in the same amount for since 2020. The city's wastewater collection management plan, presented to council last year, determined that approximately 8% of Longmont sewer lines are undersized for existing growth. Upgrades to these sewer pipe segments to adequately meet the anticipated build-out will cost the city over $46 million. Additionally, the state enacted Regulation 85, which calls for more stringent water quality standards and requires new or modified treatment processes. The city's 2018 discharge permit is currently on a compliance schedule. This includes the design of a new chemical removal system, which was designed in 2021, and construction is anticipated to begin in 2023. Improvements to the wastewater treatment facility will meet water quality standards, extend the life of the plant, improve operations, and reduce operating costs. This graph is a model of the cash flow analysis for the wastewater fund. The descending black line in the graph represents the cash flow projection for upcoming years at current rates. Due to increased costs and stagnant rates, current wastewater service revenue will not be sufficient to meet annual revenue requirements, provide adequate debt service coverage, nor maintain appropriate fund reserves. In August, we will be presenting information on cost of service and proposed rates. Proposed ordinances are anticipated to be presented to Council in Q4 of this year. Also later this year, we will be presenting rate study information for the Electric Community Investment Fee, or ECIF, as well as system development fees for water, wastewater, and storm drainage. We want to stress that we are sensitive to the community's needs and how rate changes will affect them. During COVID, there was an increase in past due balances. However, this number is now decreasing. To support the community, the city offers assistance programs such as Longmont Cares, which is income qualified and offers rebates for water, grocery sales tax, property tax and rent, park and greenway fees, and electricity. And in order to continue to support the community, we continue to enhance this program. Last year, a storm drainage rebate was added to Longmont Cares, and the amount of the rebate for electric was also increased. As part of these rate studies, we will strive to uphold these goals to provide the best services, adhere to regulations, encourage conservation, and adequately fund the utility while being sensitive to how rate changes may affect all members of this community. Thank you for your time this evening. I'd like to return to the previous slide as we are asking for Council to review these goals and confirm that they are aligned with Council's goals for upcoming rate studies. Thank you, and let us know if you have any questions.
Do I see, I don't see any questions. Okay, Councilor Waters. Whoops, you didn't go on. There you go.
Could you go back to slide 8? Just help me understand that the decline in our cash position, this is the depletion, this is not decline in revenues, this is the decline in reserves, right? Okay, that I just wanted to clarify that I was interpreting it properly, number one. Number two, unrelated to this particular set of variables, but what's been part of our conversation is what some would like us to do, what we'd like to be able to do with wastewater diversion, with solid waste diversion across the board. Regional composting solutions, recycling, et cetera, commercial composting, the whole package. As I recall, there were some pretty substantial rate or fee increases in that bundle of possibilities. Is that going to be part of this discussion, or that looms out there as another set of rates that we're going to be talking about?
Mayor Peck, Councilmember Waters, we are not considering those changes this year because there's that ongoing conversation about what those policy changes will be that will be followed by a rate conversation probably for updated rates in 2024.
Okay, that's helpful to know. But what is resonating with me is the message, just bite the bullet, right? Just bite the bullet and increase the cost, the fees or the rates. And it's like when you know this is coming or something like it, We ought to get the gestalt, the big picture of all that, because we're going to hear a lot, right? We'll read about it tomorrow, and we're going to start hearing a lot about, in a time of unprecedented, in the last 40 years, highest rates of inflation, the cost of living. Now we're going to talk about rate increases, which I get, right? I mean, and we're talking about paying for the cost of doing business and passing that along.
So if I can jump in to part of your question, those are the things that we're looking at. I think the point on this one is when you look at all of our enterprise funds, the two that are really that we're really focusing on right now are wastewater and the electric, based on what we're seeing. Even when we're seeing those inflationary pressures, frankly, across the board to every aspect of our operation. So we're managing it in certain areas. Part of the decisions that we're actually making right now is when we look at some of our capital projects and some of our large capital projects, is based on the cost increases that we're seeing today, we're making the decision to hold in terms of moving on construction, anticipating, based on what we're hearing about the possibility of a recession and some other components, that may balance some of the expenses, because we don't have enough revenue on some of the projects that we have in place based on the cost increases. And so I think as we move into these conversations and we move into the budget piece, I think we are going to have to look at what is this overall burden that we're looking at in terms of the community, because embedded in these costs are costs that we have no choice as to whether or not we assume on the wastewater side, because those are regulatory and we have to do the work. And so there are just certain things that we're going to be talking to you about through this, is we have to do it. And if we don't, we may not get permitted. And how are we weighing those against other things? Because we have to look at what's the overall cost burden to the residents of our community.
So Harold, when we get there, what's going to be really helpful is to have us, but mostly for the whole community, understand the kind of choices we're going to have to make. It's not like we're not going to have to make some hard decisions, and it's not like there's going to be costs associated with those that everybody's going to pay, in spite of what we've done with our CARES program. I mean, which is a righteous effort, but it's a small percentage of the whole community that actually participates. But there are choices. If we don't do A, B, or C, here's what we can anticipate short-term and long-term. And as a fiduciary responsibility, as a health and public safety responsibility, these are the things we're going to have to consider. I just think we ought to be really thoughtful about how we frame some of those up. If you don't do this, here's what you're going to anticipate. The last question, and then I'll be quiet. The $46 million for expanding capacity of our sewer system, are we going to see in this a fee structure that allows us to do debt service on that kind of expense, that $46 million, to bring us up to code and to satisfy growth?
Mayor Peck, Councilmember Waters, I think debt financing is certainly
it's going to be part of the
look at
discussion.
for those long-term.
All right, and that's likely through whatever we see as fee structure.
Yeah, and I think back to the point on the slide when we talk about smoothing the rate impact, it is utilizing debt to smooth it.
Yeah. All right, thanks.
Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. My question amounts to, how did this happen? Because, I mean, I understand we've got, inflationary pressures and so on. But if I remember correctly, the last time we considered our wastewater treatment costs, we reset rates and did not plan to have our cash position go negative in 2025. So can we see what the sources of additional cost are and how they have driven this? Did we fail to anticipate the inadequacy of the physical inadequacy of the sewer system? What happened?
Mayor Peck, Councilmember Martin, one of the things that Raven mentioned is the last time we considered wastewater rates was in 2017, and we set rates for 2018, 19, and 20. So we actually haven't had any increases, even to keep up with inflation, since 2020. So in a certain context, even just that inflationary piece, and especially in a time when, the producer price index is over 10%,
Yeah.
in year over year. So straight up costs, and then the additional costs associated with those regulatory requirements. And then last year when we brought the collection system master plan, those costs had not been included in the long-term financial plan yet, as those were newly identified projects.
Okay.
So a few moving pieces, certainly.
Yeah, all right.
And
So-
if I can jump into, I think what Bob has pointed out, and we had this conversation last week, the regulatory environment is becoming more aggressive. And so one of the projects that we talked about was sort of water quality standards when it leaves the plant. And I think it's chlorides that come in there. And that was a method that we were looking at using, but because of this other standard, it creates other issues, which means we may have to change the design and what we're doing. So that's a part of it. To also give you an example, when we're evaluating Nelson Flanders, that's the one we're holding. The estimated price increase on that project is $30 million. Beyond what was budgeted based on materials and everything that we're seeing in the market. And
okay.
So when we talk about the market impacting these projects in a significant way,
Yeah.
when you're looking at these large projects, it really is hitting them, and it's millions upon millions, which is why we're sort of waiting, because if you see those recession headwinds coming, that's then going to say we need to try to time it just right so we can take advantage.
Then we had spec, so that's an additional increase. And then third, we anticipate inflation for a while as the cost of operations is higher than we thought it would be. Is that yes, no?
And I do want to clarify that Nelson Flanders is our water treatment plant, but it's
Yeah.
as an example of
As an
how
example, okay.
capital costs are increasing.
So then
Yes.
for the waste treatment and the chlorides, because, I didn't think Nelson Flanders was that either, but then the example.
No, I
threw
used
me.
it just to say
Yeah.
that's what cost increases are doing
Okay,
to us.
so in terms of the changes that we do,
We mentioned a 30 million price increase on Nelson Flanders. We don't really actually know it's 30 million. What we do know is that we used to be able to get a guaranteed price that they would hold for months or even a year. Now it's down to days. So the only way that they can insure themselves, most constructors against that, is to increase their contingencies so high that they have no risk. So it's, as Harold said, not really a good environment to build in. But there are multiple factors that are driving these prices. Some are the cost of construction, some are the enhanced regulatory requirements, and then along with those come greater.
We started looking at, well, do you value engineer that design so you can cover that $30 million cost? We said no, because we need to have it designed for what we intended to. But the bidding environment and the building environment is so chaotic right now that in many cases you don't actually know until it's 90% designed and you're putting it out. And we can talk about the fire stations, we can talk about a lot of projects where we're seeing that, and you don't really know what it's going to cost until you put it out, and then you better be ready to act on it, because they're not holding it. They're not holding prices.
okay, but this pretty stripy graph here isn't about fire stations or Nelson Flanders at all. And what I'm trying to get to is what are the specific drivers of cost that are in wastewater specifically that are changing the way this graph looks.
So we can bring back some more specific information about the capital plan that we need to implement in order to, have adequate capacity and also meet those changing regulatory requirements. But, to add to what Harold and Bob were saying, we do have that increasingly uncertain regulatory environment as well. So we know some of the things that we need to do, and we don't know others. So, you know, it's the known unknowns, the unknown unknowns, right, that are always going to get you.
Yeah, I guess, but I still don't know how these particular numbers were derived.
These particular numbers are derived based on what we do know is required in the capital plan. So that has kind of this first set of regulatory improvements to meet our 2018 permit requirements for Reg 85.
At the current, in the current environment that we're in.
Maybe we could see the spreadsheet.
Yeah, we can, but in the current environment that we're in.
I understand that about holding.
Well, no, but I mean, the numbers could go down.
I understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right now has gone up in cost dramatically. And so that's also embedded in this are those cost increases as well. And so this is not just a capital increase. This is kind of where the world is pushing us just generally in terms of all of our operating costs. And so I think our chemical increase has gone up
3 and 4 times now.
Yeah. And so it is not just a capital equation, it is everything that's that we need in order to operate those facilities. Now, to say when you see the curve and you go, here's what it is, absent a rate increase, we would give you all options to go, here's how we change that curve so we're not in the negative. What we're saying, though, is if we need to look at doing what we think we need to do now, here's what it's going to look like. So this is not an absolute to say we're going to be in the negative. It just means that if we don't take certain actions, we're going to be making other decisions within the utility in order to get done what we need to from a regulatory component and make sure that we have the appropriate fund balances and cash in place.
2,000. So we actually had to use all that we requested from you in the budget last year for 2 to buy 1 and add 10,000 more. That's a good analogy of what's happening here. And it's happening everywhere.
Okay. I'm persuaded, but I still want to see the spreadsheet.
Okay. Thank you. That was a very good but depressing. I just want to add on, too, that we have to remember that PRPA is looking to raise their rates as well. So
that's why we included the electric. But for that, I think we wouldn't have brought an electric component to this. And so that is actually why we introduced it, is based on the feedback from PRPA.
Great. Okay. Thank you for nothing. Okay. We are now at the end of all of our presentations and study session items, so we need mayor and council comments. Do we have any comments? Councilor Waters.
Thanks, Mayor Peck. Earlier today, in a conversation with a fellow Rotarian, she was describing a project that somebody from CSU had described to her and sent her an email, and she was curious whether or not anybody in Longmont would be interested in participating in this project. I think it's something that people will be interested in. I'd like to just read the email, and then if anybody's listening or you know anybody who might be interested in this, it would be an interesting opportunity for somebody who thinks this might be fit in their front yard. This comes from a researcher at CSU, addressed to her friend here. I'm launching a pilot residential rain garden project through the CSU Colorado Stormwater Center. Through this project, we're getting rain garden planting layouts, training community members how to install rain gardens, and we'll be selecting a total of 19 residential homes to install free demonstration rain gardens. Language justice is a critical part of this project, and all materials will be in both English and Spanish. We're currently looking for interested homeowners in Longmont to participate in this project. Could you please help us spread the word? If you, your neighbor, family member, friend, etc., might be interested in participating in the project, please fill out the application. There's some links here. So anybody who might be interested, they provide the materials. It's an R&D effort, so there'll be people. It has to go in the front yard because they want to be able to collect data without worrying about dogs or whatever's in the backyard. But it's an interesting project, kind of fits with our sustainability and conservation priorities. And if anybody's interested, I'm happy to forward the email.
That does sound interesting. Actually, I'm wondering if Rigo would be interested in putting it in the city line.
Yeah, I don't know what the timeline is, but that's a good question.
Yeah.
I'll follow up if that.
Okay. Regal Leo.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else that has comments? Councillor Yarbrough.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. I just want to reiterate the Juneteenth celebrations. So the city and Families of Color Colorado are partnering to put on an event, a Juneteenth event on Sunday, Father's Day, June 19th, from 1 to 6. And I would love for the community to come together and celebrate, listen to some music, dance, watch a fashion show from the first Black designer from Banana Republic to be here from LA. So we're gonna have a good time and enjoy one another and get to see your neighbors, and I would love to see you all there. Thank you.
Thanks for that reminder.
Roosevelt Park.
So I do have something. I got a letter from the LCJP, Longmont Community Justice Partnership, that they are interested in having a council liaison at their meetings. So if you, I don't know how to do this. I suppose we should maybe talk about it or get comments. Why don't you think about it, councilors, and maybe we can talk about it when we do our board and commission interviews and see if we think that's a good fit. Sounds good. So, city manager remarks.
Mayor, council.
Eugene, city attorney.
No comments, Mayor?
All right. That brings us to the last part of our agenda, which is to adjourn. So, do I have a motion?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilor Waters, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez, that we adjourn. All those in favor, let's just say aye. Aye. All right. Thank you, everybody. Good night.